This lunchtime. The UK's highest court has ruled the Scottish Government cannot hold another independence referendum unless Westminster agrees. And that's it from the BBC News at 1. So it's goodbye from me, and on BBC One now we'll join the BBC's news teams where you are. Have a very good afternoon.
The headlines on Reporting Scotland this Wednesday lunchtime. The Supreme Court rules that the Scottish Government does not have the right to hold an independence referendum. But the First Minister says democracy will not be denied and the next general election will be a de facto referendum. Hello there, good afternoon. The decision was unanimous. This morning, the Supreme Court ruled that Scotland does not have the power to legislate for another independence referendum without agreement from Westminster. Our Westminster correspondent, David Porter, was outside the court as that ruling was delivered. And David, what does the judgment set out?
Put very simply, the Supreme Court has decided that the Scottish Government does not have the right to initiate a referendum on Scottish independence. If that was to happen, it would have to happen with Westminster's blessing, which of course we know will not happen. At 9:45 this morning, the 5 Supreme Court justices, led by the President of the Supreme Court, Lord Reid, walked into the courtroom and gave their verdict. Lord Reid said that they had considered all the evidence and the Scottish Parliament did not have the power in law to initiate a second independence referendum. Cue a reaction both for and against the decision from both sides of the political spectrum, down here in London and also up in Scotland as well. It will not be any surprise when I tell you that the issue dominated Prime Minister's questions.
The Prime Minister has every right to oppose independence. He has no right to deny democracy to the people of Scotland. If the Prime Minister keeps blocking that referendum, will he at least be honest and confirm that the very idea that the United Kingdom is a voluntary union of nations is now dead and buried?
Well, Mr. Speaker, let me start by saying we respect the clear and definitive ruling of the Supreme Court of the United Kingdom. And what I would say to the honourable gentleman, firstly, I am looking forward to also seeing the moderator of Scotland tomorrow. And I think that the people of Scotland want us to be working on fixing the major challenges that we collectively face, whether that's the economy, supporting the NHS, or indeed supporting Ukraine. Now is the time for politicians to work together.
Well, the issue may have been clarified in law. That was really quite simple, but the politics has not changed. There are still very deep divisions, and the independence question is still the fault line that runs through Scottish politics. The politics of the situation have not changed one iota. As I talk to you from Westminster, behind me in the House of Commons, there is in effect an emergency debate going on about what has happened today, the Supreme Court's ruling. But as I say, the legal position may be clear, the politics far from it.
David Porter, thank you very much. Well, this morning we've been to Fife, where the results of the 2014 independence referendum vote mirrored the national results, with 45% voting yes and 55% voting no. Here's what people at a family and toddler group had to say.
I'm disappointed to hear that this morning. I think it was an important decision on either side of the independence coin, whether you're pro or against. I feel like it's taken away our right to self-governance.
You should have the right to decide if we go for independence. You don't have to vote for it if you don't want to, but yeah, you should have the right.
The law would have been drafted in such a way that there were reserved powers for Westminster, and that was one of them. So I'm not surprised. What we do next is the interesting bit.
The legal argument for a referendum is now closed, with the judgment appearing to push the question back to the politicians. This morning, the First Minister said democracy will not be denied and Scotland's voice would not be silenced. Our reporter, Lindsay Hughes, joins us now from Edinburgh. And Lindsay, what has the First Minister said?
Well, Sarah, the First Minister was giving a press conference in Edinburgh reacting to the court's decision. She says she's very disappointed, but that she accepts and respects the court's judgment. She says, though, she won't be wallowing in it. So what next? Well, Nicola Sturgeon has already told us about her next plan, and that is to go into the next general election fighting it on the issue of independence, a so-called de facto referendum, and she plans to hold a special conference of the SNP in the new year to look at the approach to that. In the meantime, though, she is still seeking agreement from the UK government for that referendum.
What I will not do, however, is go cap in hand. My expectation, in the short term at least, is that the UK government will maintain its position of outright democracy denial. That position is, in my view, not just unsustainable, it is also utterly self-defeating. The more contempt the Westminster establishment shows for Scottish democracy, the more certain it is that Scotland will vote yes when the choice does come to be made.
And Lindsay, we've heard the legal arguments, but how does this change the politics around Scottish independence?
Well, I think we're going to see the argument from the independence side, the pro-independence side, evolve to use this court judgment to say it's now been shown that the UK is not a voluntary union. Indeed, Nicola Sturgeon said herself in her press conference that this raises profound and deeply uncomfortable questions about the basis and the future of the UK. We'll hear more about that in rallies taking place across Scotland later on today, including one here outside Holyrood. For the pro-union side, though, well, they will continue to say the issue was settled in 2014.
Holyrood, thank you very much. Now, elsewhere, the biggest teachers' union is warning that more strikes will take place if a pay dispute is not resolved. Tomorrow, schools across Scotland will be closed because of a strike by the EIS. Two other teachers' unions plan action next month. The EIS has already announced more strikes in January, but today warned more could follow. The unions rejected a revised pay offer given to them yesterday afternoon. Islanders say mobile and broadband services in part of Lewis have been down for almost 5 weeks. UG has no alternative connections with the service used by the local GP, surgery and primary school. Operator EE said the fault is complex and it's working to restore the service.
There's a big part of our community that don't have a landline, so they have no BT service. So when the EE service goes down, they are stuck, completely stuck. So this affects normal communications, but it also affects emergency communications. The retained fire team in our village rely on getting a page or a WhatsApp message when there's a shout, and that's not happening.
And now Derek's here with the weather. Good afternoon.
Hi Sarah, thank you. Good afternoon to you. Well, it certainly started off rather miserable across many parts of the country, and that's as a result of this frontal system that moved in from the southwest, and that will continue to journey northwards and eastwards through the remainder of this afternoon. So persistent spells of rain still to come over the next few hours for the Western Isles, Northwest Highlands and northern Aberdeenshire. Come further south though, it'll start to brighten up from the southwest, much drier here too, give or take the odd shower. Some of those could be on the heavy side. Temperatures up a notch in the values we've seen of late, 9 or 10 Celsius at best, but brisk winds from the south but strong to gale force across the Northern Isles. Into this evening and overnight, that wet weather from today will lift northwards. Behind it, we'll see a number of blustery showers feeding in from the west, those becoming confined to the northwest come tomorrow morning. So largely dry with some clear spells and not as cold as the night just gone. But winds from the south will start to increase by the time we reach tomorrow morning, especially so around the southwest corner. As a result, the Met Office have issued this yellow warning in place till 2 p.m. tomorrow afternoon. Gusts expected up to 70 miles per hour for a time through the morning. So after a largely dry, bright start to the day, it'll cloud over and this band of rain will move in from the west. Heavy at times, especially in the west, but turning that bit lighter and patchier further east. But some heavy pulses still embedded within that, and it'll be windy right across the country, but highs of 11 Celsius. Then on Friday, after a bright start in the east and the south, it'll turn cloudy with outbreaks of rain in the north and the west. Always that bit drier further east, but a blustery all day and highs of 11 or 12 Celsius. Sarah.
Derek, thank you very much. Thank you. And that's all for now. Reporting Scotland is back at 6 o'clock. See you then. Bye-bye.
The BBC